So the last video that I made, maybe not the last one I posted, but it's the last one that I made, I was talking about how the Switch was definitely worth it in 2022. It's definitely still something that if you don't have one, you should be picking up. But today, I wanted to talk about something a little bit different, a little bit more of a specific question. We know the Switch is still worth it in 2022, but is the Switch Lite still worth it? We're gonna talk about it right now. What's up, guys? Welcome back, or welcome for the first time. Very quickly, before we get started, I want to shout out my supporters on Patreon. You're seeing their names right here. If you would like to support the channel in that way, there will be a link down below. If not, leave a like. Leaving a like also helps a ton, but let's go ahead and get into this. Let's talk about the Switch Lite. I want to go back, really honestly, to the beginning of this channel. The very first video I ever did, the very first one, was the day that I went to go pick up my Switch Lite from, where was it? GameStop. I went to GameStop. It was actually, I went back and watched that video. It's amazing what a couple of years can do. Anyway, I went to GameStop, picked up my Switch Lite. I filmed that whole thing, took it back to the old studio, if you guys remember that. Took it down there, unboxed it. That was the first video on this channel. From then, I made a ton of Switch Lite content. I was somebody who really fell in love with the Switch Lite. Honestly, if you've been a subscriber of this channel for a while, it's a pretty good chance you probably found me from something Switch Lite related. If you did, do me a favor, go down in the comments, let me know if that's actually how you found this channel, if it was something Switch Lite related. I'm actually really curious about that. So, I love the Switch Lite. Even though the Switch Lite didn't dock, doesn't have removable Joy-Cons, it doesn't do really anything that the regular Switch does except play the same exact games. But that's just it. It does play the same exact games. It's got the same exact chip in it as the other Switch and the OLED Switch. So in that sense, if you're looking for something, you know, smaller, yeah, the Switch Lite still makes sense, but we're gonna have to get into this a little bit deeper because there's a lot of stuff now. I feel like things have kind of changed. And as I said, I'm somebody who absolutely loved the Switch Lite. I had 4 Switch Lites at one point. That's absolutely ridiculous. Nobody needs 4 Switch Lites. And unfortunately, at this time, I don't have any Switch Lites. I don't even have one Switch Lite here anymore. The only Switch I have, the only one I have left, is actually my OLED Switch, but I'm gonna tell you why. And that doesn't mean the Switch Lite is just not worth it, that nobody should buy it, because it is for a certain person, but it is a very specific person. I will go into some of the reasons why I do like the Switch Lite though before I get into the rest of this stuff. One, I really like the fact that the Switch Lite is one piece. The removable Joy-Cons, for me, it's nice to be able to customize that and, you know, change the colors if you want, but I rarely take those things off and use them as a controller, especially sideways. I mean, sometimes if you have to have something like I've been playing Let's Go Eevee, and you have to have one Joy-Con, so in that sense, yeah, I guess I do use a Joy-Con for that. And you know, I love like the Zelda Joy-Cons. I love all the extra Joy-Con stuff, that's fine. But for me, having it all one piece and just a little bit smaller, I really like that. The battery life is still good. It's not as much as the OLED or the regular Switch, but it's still pretty good. And I know there was a lot of talk about the screen size, and I will say this, the screen size of the Switch Lite compared to the regular Switch isn't that big of a difference. But when you go from a Switch Lite to the OLED Switch, I mean, obviously the OLED screen looks way better, but the size, just the size alone is definitely noticeable from one to the other. But like I was saying, I only have my OLED Switch now. And the only reason for me that I stopped using my Switch Lite so much is really just because I started streaming. Obviously, to stream, you have to be docked to get it to the TV, to the stream. You can't do that handheld. I mean, I guess you could, that would not look good. Maybe like an over-the-shoulder camera or something. You can't really do it. You have to have your Switch docked to stream. So I started using my regular Switch again after that, you know, kind of transferred everything back. And then for a while, I was trying to do the thing where, you know, I kept my Switch on the dock and played there, and then used my Lite when I was, you know, around the house or leaving, I would just use that. But it did end up being a hassle, way more of a hassle than I hoped it would. And they did fix some of that. They have it now to where things are supposed to update automatically once you do the first save, once you do the first backup on the other system. It's supposed to start going back and forth automatically. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So that didn't really work out all that much. So I ended up just kind of abandoning my Switch Lite, especially once I started playing Animal Crossing, because at that point, you couldn't even move the island from a Switch Lite to a Switch. You just couldn't do it. Now they have fixed that, obviously. They have a full app on the Switch that you can do that. But at the time, it just didn't really make a lot of sense for me to still be using the Switch Lite. And then after that, the OLED came out, and to me, at this point now, and again, we're gonna go into this a little bit deeper on who the Switch Lite is for and who it's not for, but for me, at this point, even though the OLED is more expensive, I feel that this is definitely the superior Switch. In handheld, the OLED screen is that much better. That I do like the single piece, the solid construction of the Lite. I really would love to see just a Switch that didn't have any Joy-Cons, like a regular size Switch, some type of Switch Lite, Switch OLED hybrid. That would be amazing, but we don't have that right now. It's not what we're talking about. For me, it's the OLED. It's not the Switch Lite, and it's for the reasons I just said. It's the screen. It is the superior handheld device when you're comparing the two. But if you're not considering an OLED at all, and maybe looking at the other Switch, the older Switch that's a little bit cheaper, that's $300, and then you look at the price of the Switch Lite, that's $200, and you're really not that worried about playing dock, maybe at that point the Switch Lite is for you. I think that's who the Switch Lite is still for. Someone who does have a very tight budget, because in my opinion, the $200 to the $350, that is a big jump. If you want to do all that stuff, I think it's very worth it to do that. But for someone who just wants to play the games, someone who wants to play the Marios, the Zeldas, all the stuff that Nintendo has to offer that you cannot get anywhere else, if you're on that budget, the Lite is fine. It's perfect. Again, it runs all the same games, exactly the same. You're just not gonna be able to dock it. Obviously, you're not gonna be able to detach any Joy-Cons, you can't do that, but you can hook controllers up to it. You can hook Joy-Con up to it. So if there's games that require a Joy-Con or something like that, or you need to play 2 players, I mean, you can essentially prop it up against something or use a case to hold it up and play 2 players. I mean, it's gonna be a small screen. You're gonna really be close to the thing, but it can be done. And if you're on a budget and that's the way you need to go, I would say go ahead and do it. If you only have the 200, or maybe you just can't find an OLED, maybe you can't find one of the regular Switches, you can only find the Switch Lites in store, I would say go ahead and pick one up. It's cheaper. You're going to be able to play, again, all the games on the Switch, you can play on the Switch Lite. For me, it is just something at this point that I don't need. Like I said, when I started streaming, things completely changed, but I do think the Switch Lite is a very, very good product. I just don't think it's for everyone at this point. I think with the OLED, if you have the money, that's the way to go. The screen is that much better. That is, if you have the money, I say go for the OLED every time. But there's always this, and I want to say this before I start talking about what I'm about to talk about. Don't wait for the new Switch to come out ever. It's something that you're taking away time that you could be spending playing the Switch now, worrying about waiting for what's coming next. Don't worry about what's coming next, because it's probably not right around the corner. If it hasn't been announced, that means it's not gonna be happening probably anytime soon, and you're gonna get plenty of use out of whatever Switch you decide to buy. But I do feel like, and obviously this is just me speculating, I said this a few times yesterday on the podcast and stuff, but I really do feel like the next logical step for the Switch Lite is to get the OLED treatment. I do really think that we will see a slight redesign like we did with the Switch OLED model, just on the Switch Lite. I just don't see any way that they're not going to upgrade the screen on that one. The same way they did this, maybe bump it up another $50, maybe it'll be $250, so we'll have $250, $350, and then who knows what later, if anything. But my final verdict on all this is, if you want a Switch Lite and you got 200 bucks to spend and that is it, get a Switch Lite. If you can find an OLED and you have the extra money, in my opinion, that is the superior way to play the Nintendo games on the Switch system. Hands down, it's not really even close. But guys, that's gonna do it for this one. I'm gonna leave you a video here, show you some cool Switch Lite accessories, and then I'm gonna put another random, I don't know what, some other Switch Lite video here. Both of these are gonna be old. They'll both be good for at least a laugh. But thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, make sure you are subscribed. We'll see you in the next one.